every day. Makes me wanna holler, go away. I need more peace and hope and love. Where do I find it in this crazy old world? I need strategies, strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio. Every time I listen, Lauren and David share strategies for living, and it makes me aware. I got strategies for living, strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio.
Oh, you know, we need them. Yeah, we do. We need those strategies, don't we? We need strategies for living. Are you ready then? Are you ready for your daily dose of radio rehab?
I am ready.
I knew you would be today. I had a feeling. Hey folks, welcome into Strategies for Living. I'm Dr. David McMillian. She is psychotherapist Lauren Leon McMillian, and you love poetry.
Absolutely.
And so I've got a special treat for you today.
So I've heard.
We have acclaimed poet and author Jill Bialosky as our life strategist today. And no, she's not going to likely read a lot of poetry to you, but
that's okay.
She has her latest book is a personal history of her mother. It's called "The End Is the Beginning." It's a very brave and compassionate examination of her mother's life and death. And here's the unique part. It's told in reverse order from burial to birth.
Yeah.
And
I think that's poetic in itself. You know, it's the reflection, perhaps. I mean, I'm interested to hear what Jill says. The reflection back of.
Yvonne Bialosky died in an assisted care facility March the 29th, 2020. And, of course, anytime there is a loss, it is going to unleash emotions. And so I'm sure Jill will talk about grief, but also confusion and doubt and guilt and all of those that were compounded by COVID-19, because, you know, that was the period. So we have a lot to talk about today.
Absolutely.
With life strategist Jill Bialosky. And folks, I am delighted that you've tuned in and joined us here on Strategies for Living. And we appreciate you, and we appreciate our sponsors who make all of this possible. The Robinson Film Center, and Azalea Cleaners, and Pintail Roofing, and Learning RX, and the Balanced Life Wellness Center, and Fertitta's Delicatessen, home of The Godfather, alligator Italian sausage, and some pretty good muffies too. Back in a moment to meet Jill Bialosky, our life strategist. The End Is the Beginning, the personal history of her mother. Back in a moment.
Tune in daily, find the light. Healthy mind and spirits bright. Strategies for living strong. Feel the vibe, it won't go wrong. Body moves and soul align. Catch the rhythm, feel the time. Radio rehab every day. Chase those clouds of gray away. Your daily dose of radio rehab. Lift you up when skies seem drab. Mind and body, spirits free. Living life in harmony.
And welcome into Strategies for Living Radio. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillian. Let's introduce our life strategist today. She is Jill Bialosky. She's the author of 5 acclaimed collections of poetry. most recently Asylum. Her poems have appeared in the New Yorker, the New York Times, and the Atlantic, among others. She's the author of many novels, including The Deceptions, and several works of nonfiction, including The End is the Beginning, History of a Suicide, and Poetry Will Save Your Life. In 2015, Jill was honored by the Poetry Society of America for her distinguished contribution to the field of poetry. And so we welcome Jill Bialosky to Strategies for Living. Ms. Bialosky, welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
How could we not, when you have you've written such a beautiful personal history of your mother. And wow, the end is the beginning. So, Yvonne Bialosky was your mom's name, right?
Iris Yvonne Bialosky.
Iris, okay, I'm sorry.
Iris, yes.
Mm-hmm.
No worries.
And so Iris passed away in an assisted care facility. She passed away March the 29th, 2020. And, you know, when there is the passing of a parent, there is the natural, all of the flood of emotions. But in addition to all of that, this was right at the beginning of COVID, wasn't it?
Yes, it was the first month of COVID, which made it very difficult for me to process my mother's death because I was living in New York under quarantine and my mother was in Cleveland, where I was born. And because of the restrictions, if you remember, even to travel, you would have to quarantine for 14 days before you could enter an institution.
Right.
And because of that, I was not able to be with my mother when she was in hospice, when we knew that she was passing. And I wasn't able to attend her funeral, which due to COVID had to be outside gravesite, and only 10 people could attend.
Wow.
And so I luckily have a sister who was living in Cleveland and of course went to the graveside burial, and we were able to witness via FaceTime the short service.
So when did, of course, you're a writer. You write. Did it hit
Yes.
you, did it hit you right away? I'm going to write about this. Did that come quickly?
Well,
did it bubble up and evolve? How did it come to be?
Well, for many years, I knew that I wanted to tell my mother's story because I wanted to preserve a period of history through this narrative of an extraordinary woman and the family that she made under really extreme circumstances, to capture what it was like for a woman of my mother's milieu.
Yeah.
And I knew that my mother's story and what was at stake would resonate with others. But I didn't really know how to tell her story or when to tell her story. And then it was after she passed away, I felt this strong desire to, perhaps it was the eulogy that I wasn't able to give for my mother, and a full eulogy wasn't really possible during COVID, that really made me feel determined to tell my mother's story. And so it was during the period of COVID where I began to write about her. I actually published a short piece in the New York Times about witnessing a funeral during COVID. And that sort of, I think writing that piece triggered me to continue the story.
Right. And so what inspired you, and why did you choose to tell your mother's story in reverse?
Yes, that was an interesting exercise for me. And I did that because so my mother, as you mentioned, I think was suffering the last years of her life from Alzheimer's, where I was witnessing the toll of the slow progression of the disease and what it took from her. And when I started writing the book, I did start writing it from grieving during COVID and then witnessing her funeral. And then I wrote a piece about her last years in a care home where she was suffering from Alzheimer's. At the same time, I was reading a poem by T.S. Eliot called Four Quartets, because I was doing I was reading his work, and I use an epigraph in my book from his lines from Four Quartets, and they read, "What we call the beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from." And then after I read those lines, it occurred to me that telling my mother's story from the end to the beginning would allow the reader to see her slowly coming alive through these periods, these pivotal periods that I chart of her life. I very much responded to Eliot's sentiment in those lines that for all of us on our journey through life, the beginning of who we are is always at the end, and the end is always at the beginning. So then organically, it made the most sense for me to tell the story this way, and for the book to land at the beginning when my mother was first born. I didn't realize, however, that writing the book this way, of course, kept my mother alive for me. Yes.
Did you feel connected to her through the process? Could you hear her speaking to you as you were writing her stories?
I did, Laura, and that's such an insightful thing to say. Yes, I felt her with me when I was writing this book. And the other reason I wanted to write this book is that when I wanted to find out more about the woman behind the mother, when we're sons and daughters of we see our mother or our parent just through that prism of being their child, but I wanted to dig deeper and to understand the whole of my mother's life. And so, especially writing the periods before I was born, that was very magical for me to conjure what her life was like and her family, and also what was happening in history during that time. During World War II, she was born in 1933. I felt her with me the whole time I was writing, and sometimes I could hear the words that she said to me at different periods of my life. Memory is a fickle thing, isn't it? That we sometimes remember things that just pop up that we had totally forgotten. And the experience of being a writer, especially of personal writing, one really has to rely on memory.
So, you were talking about your mom's generation of women, how they were very different, but also how exploring that role was different for you. How did exploring her life help you to connect the dots between generational trauma and strength in your family?
Yes, well, my mother did experience trauma. She experienced many losses, and the first loss that she experienced was when she was 8 years old, and she had a very close relationship with her own mother. She grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, in a very modest suburb, and her mother was pregnant And during the pregnancy, she became sick with scarlet fever. And at that time, there were no antibiotics. And her mother died giving birth to her brother. And that kind of trauma that my mother experienced, until I wrote this book, I don't think that I really appreciated how deep a loss that is. And I think that loss really, in so many ways, and I write about this in my book, I think, first of all, it made my mother a very sensitive and deeply empathetic person, because suddenly her life changed. And I do feel that trauma is passed on through generations, because, well, I'm not a psychologist, so, but just through even my own experience, I feel that, if you, as children, were our parents' witness, we witnessed them probably more privately than anybody else.
Sure.
And I was a very intuitive child, and I always could feel my mother's pain and suffering, and also her joys and happiness. But I'm certain that whatever a parent goes through in their own life affects their children.
Definitely.
How could it not?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how could it not?
Let me get a break
Yes.
here. The End is the Beginning. That's a beautiful book by Jill Bialosky. That's a personal history of my mother, and we've got lots more to learn from Jill today, our life strategist here on Strategies for Living. Don't go away. We'll be right back. You're going to see the difference. When you go to Azalea Cleaners, you'll hear about it too. Azalea Cleaners has been fine dry cleaning since 1958, plus laundry, alterations and repairs, comforters, wedding gown cleaning and restoration. You'll hear about it from your friends because they'll see it too. They'll notice the Azalea difference. Azalea is convenient. 732 Azalea Drive, 9220 Ellerby Road, and 9227 Mansfield Road. Plus, the front door of your home or business with Azalea's delivery on demand. Just text SETUP to 249-8283, and Azalea will pick up your clothes and deliver them back clean and fresh to you. You can't get closer than that. That's the Azalea difference. You'll notice it right away. Others will too. The Azalea difference. Fine dry cleaning since 1958. Text SETUP to 249-8283 and get the Azalea difference. AzaleaCleaners.com.
Hi, this is Jay Merle for Pintail Roofing. Let's talk about quality. When you hire Pintail to build your roof, here's what you can expect. Quality and quality control are the most important concerns for us at Pintail, and you need to know that Pintail stands tall with swift and professional performance on any warranty call. This is our most important policy. And remember, we're your neighbors. We'll be here for you for the long haul. Our family's lived here for over 100 years, and we aren't going anywhere. On the commercial side of Pintail's business, our fluid-applied roofing solutions can save thousands of dollars over conventional commercial roofing options. Call Pintail at 226-ROOF for a free inspection of your home or commercial building. That's 226-7663. Pintail Roofing. What's the condition of your roof?
Facing the same old problems day to day makes you wanna holler, get away. Looking for the road that'll get me there, looking for hope and peace to spare. Looking for strategies, strategies for living radio, your dose of radio rehab strategies.
And welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. Lauren, Leon McMillian, David McMillian, our life strategist today. The author of The End is the Beginning. Jill Bialosky. You can find The End is the Beginning wherever you buy books. You can also go to jillbialosky.com. That's JillBialosky.com, and find out more about Jill and her works of poetry and her writing, and such a beautiful, beautiful book. Yeah. The End is the Beginning. Such a gift. I know your mother. I wonder if you should have listed her as a co-author.
Yes, maybe so.
Yeah. You might have had some explaining to do, though.
Probably the reason why I could only write about her after she passed away.
Yeah.
We've got listeners right now, Jill, and you know this as well as I do. They're navigating transitions. I mean, it could be grief. It could be change of some sort. It may be a spiritual awakening. And it seems to me this is a great, you and your mom have written a wonderful book for such a journey. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's, yes. What I'm latching onto is the journey and the different journeys that we are on in life, and how circumstances happen beyond our control that change who we are. And this certainly happened to my mother during her life, and hence it happened to me. And grief changes you. Grief makes you more, acute grief is, I think about it as almost living two lives, that you get up in the morning and you make your coffee and you do your chores and you go to work. But inside you're grieving and you're thinking about, you're just in another space inside. And I think what happens with grief is that, at least how I think about it, is that we carry those that we've lost with us, and grief comes in waves. Sometimes I write about that my mother lost her 21-year-old daughter to suicide. And of course, this was my sister. And throughout my life after my sister died, there would be times where I would see somebody that looked like her, or an anniversary of her birthday or her death would come, and then I would be flooded with grief again. And so I consider grief forever grief, because of how much we love the person that we've lost. And I know that my mother felt that way. And I write about that in my book, about the way in which she also lost her husband, my father, when she was 25 years old, and she had 3 babies under the age of 3. And she was so deeply bonded with my father. He was her great love. And even at the end of her days, and I write about this in the book, she would have memories of my father, and she was certain that they would be reunited in the afterlife. And she felt that way from the very beginning. She didn't believe in cemeteries. She never took us to see our father's grave. She never went back, because she felt that the person was inside of her. And that's just the way that she was. And so for many people, I think there's a spiritual element to grief, right?
Yes. Sure. Yes.
How Has writing the memoir changed your own understanding of grief, if it did?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that writing this book really, and being able to understand more about my mother through storytelling, through observations, through her scrapbooks and stories that people told me. And, you know, when you write a memoir, it's almost like you're living through these experiences. It becomes sort of, there's like it's very hard to explain, but you do go down this rabbit hole where you're back in that same time and place.
Sure.
And I think that I came away with far more compassion for my mother than I had realized by writing her story. And again, as I said, from thinking about her as a woman, living her life outside of being her daughter.
Yeah.
And that was very profound to me.
Yeah, I can't help but think that, you know, many people struggle with unresolved emotions towards their parents after their passing. So what advice would you offer to listeners still wrestling with unfinished conversations or complicated parental legacies?
Well, I think that I would just want to say that maybe if your parents are still alive, you might have the opportunity to ask more questions. I certainly wish that I had asked more questions about certain decisions that my mother made when I was younger. And I think that by thinking about a parent's life outside of oneself can be very liberating. Of course, I would think that if somebody is struggling over emotions from the past, I'm a firm believer in therapy. I think that it's an important way to be able to tap into emotions that you really can't talk about with a friend or a partner.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we're a little biased.
We are obviously biased for therapy.
Right, yes. Yes. No, I think it can be a wonderful experience, and just to have a compassionate listener.
Yeah, but I also like your take on being able to see your parent, you know, from a different perspective as a person, to kind of put yourself in their shoes and have some empathy and understanding for, you know, what went on in their life.
Yes, I think that is true. And I know that when I was a teenager going through my own coming of age and struggles, that was the time in which I had less patience and compassion for my mother.
Sure.
And I think that that's true for many of us at that age. And, you know, when I think about her life and what maybe she was missing out on because she was parenting as a single mother, was eye-opening. It was eye-opening for me to consider the fact that she had 3 babies under the age of 3. 3 of us were 15 months apart. And then she had my other sister through a second marriage. But I only have one son, and I am lucky to have a partner that we had equal parenting responsibilities. So I can't imagine how my mother literally, physically did it on her own.
Right.
And that's something that I wanted my book to convey, because there are so many single mothers out there raising children. And I don't think that women I don't think that there's enough validation of the role of a mother in a child's life, and that huge responsibility that mothers bear for their children.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd say it's one of the most important jobs in the world, helping to raise another human being.
Exactly. And I think we underestimate that.
Amen. Amen. I think we have a hard time, and maybe your exercise in going back, and seeing the humanity of your own mother, maybe will help some people get in better touch with their own, dude. I'm as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, my own journey with my parents, and it's just, we tend to see our parents as more,
well, they're really our first impression of God.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah. They're godlike to us.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. I didn't think of it that way.
And for some of us, that's it's hard to come off of that in our lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that, somebody recently said to me about my book that even though it was my own personal journey, it felt so universal.
Yes.
And that really made me feel very happy, because that was what I intended it
I think you have you have accomplished that.
Your and your mother's story are a gift for us all.
Amen. The book is The End is the Beginning. It's a personal history of my mother from Jill Bialosky at your favorite bookseller right now. And we've got more with Jill here on Strategies for Living. Don't go away. More to learn, more to come.
From the bayou to your table, we're keeping it alive with flavors from the family passed down to survive. The Godfather's here with a twist in the tail. Alligator Italian sausage, and it sure won't fail. It's the boss of the bayou, a taste you can't refuse. Italian tradition, Cajun infused. Godfather sausage, bold and true. The Padres bringing the bayou to you.
Get the Godfather Alligator Italian sausage only at Fertitta's Delicatessen, 1124 Fairfield Avenue in Shreveport. Pick up a muffy while you're there. The Godfather Alligator Italian sausage. It's a taste you can't refuse. Sold only at Fertitta's, 1124 Fairfield Avenue in Shreveport. Dealing with stress, pain, feel like you're running out of options? When your life is balanced, wellness is a given. True wellness is holistic. It's about the mind, the body, and the spirit, all in balance. Now, there's a place right here in Shreveport that's all about helping us achieve peak mental, emotional, and physical health. The Balanced Life, 117 Kings Highway, right next door to Strawn's. Come see and feel the difference getting your life in balance can be. Many of your friends and neighbors have already learned the difference less stress and pain mean in their lives. You can book a discovery session right now online, thebalancedlife.us. All you've got to lose is stress, pain, or maybe both. Come see and feel for yourself the real difference balanced wellness makes. The Balanced Life Wellness Center, 117 Kings Highway in Shreveport, next door to Strawn's. Thebalancedlife.us.
Facing the same old problems day to day makes you wonder how to get away. Looking for the road that'll get me there. Looking for hope and peace to spare. Looking for strategies. Strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio.
Yeah, that's who we are. Strategies for Living. Welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillian. With Jill Bialosky today. The new book is The End is the Beginning, a personal history of my mother. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And again, don't let the subtitle fool you. There's something in here for all of us.
Oh, sure.
And something to learn for all of us. It's beautiful. I know you didn't write it as poetry.
Well,
but
I don't know that you can take the poet out.
I don't think you
Jill.
can. No, I don't think you can, because the book is
through.
Yeah, the book is poetic. Jill. Yeah. I'm wondering, because you've written before about personal loss, and so this book, does it build on that, or does it diverge from the earlier works in terms of emotional processing, spiritual processing?
Well, I think every book for me is its own journey. And to be honest with you, I never really know until I begin something what it will be and how it will evolve. As a writer, I think for me, I have to have an intense, obsessive need to be able to spend the time that one spends writing a book, that the subject has to be, so important and so intense for me to actually begin to put words on a page. And really every book I've written, whether fiction or poetry or nonfiction, feels the same to me. And I'm always just really, I think it's what keeps me interested as a writer, is my ability to move from one genre to another. And I think about writing as really a form of expression for the reader to be able to actually, let me put it this way. There's a writer that I admire, Vivian Gornick, who wrote a book called Fierce Attachments about her own relationship with her mother.
Right.
And I read an article where she talked about the art of personal writing. And she said that the writer has to tell the story, tell the narrative in a way in which the disinterested reader will become interested. And really that is, it's a wonderful quote.
It is.
And I agree with that there's, personal writing is not biography or journalism, or that, in other words, it really is its own art form, that you have to choose the right events and how to tell them to create the kind of tension that will keep the reader turning the pages. And I started out writing as a poet when I was 18 or 19 years old. I took a poetry workshop at Ohio University where I was an English major.
Right.
And it was a life-changing experience for me, because the way that my teacher at the time, a poet, Stanley Plumley, how he saw poetry as a way to unlock secrets or things that we don't want to talk about, or we don't have the language to talk about. And through that class, I learned about creating images and metaphors. And you want the reader to be able to hear and see and smell exactly what you're describing. And also, you need to create some kind of tension where something happens, even in a poem. Right. And those skills, and I learned, were important skills in writing fiction and personal writing. So poetry it's all about poetry for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I want to explore
And
just
go ahead.
I want to explore just a little bit more in the little time we've got. The end is the beginning, and you mentioned this earlier, alluded to it. Finding beauty in grief, finding beauty in sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
How do we begin to look? How do we begin to glance for it, look for it, see the shimmers of it?
Mm-hmm. That's such a really mysterious question. I think sometimes I can see it. Nature is something that is very important to me. I love taking walks and being among nature, trees, and the natural world. And, in the natural world, certain trees flourish and other trees might be strangled by vines, for instance.
Right.
So I think about that life and death are so intertwined.
Mm.
And that, when we lose of course, we don't go through this life without losing someone we care about deeply. And we all know that we're mortal beings.
Right.
And so I like to think about, and I think through poetry too, how life and death are intertwined. And I think through memory, and so much of it depends on whether a person is capable of deep feeling.
Mm.
And if you're capable of deep feeling and emotion, then that's beautiful to me.
Yeah, it takes
That
courage
means
to
that-
feel deeply.
Yes, exactly. And not to disassociate with social media or quick fixes that distract us from the real
Sure, we've got plenty of them.
joys in life.
Those
yes.
distractions are always there for us these days. But
Right.
thank goodness we have creative people
Pull
like
us into the present.
Jill Bialosky, who can do that. And her new book is no exception to that. It's called The End is the Beginning, The Personal History of My Mother. And you can find it at your favorite bookseller. You can also find Jill at jillbialosky.com. Back in a moment to wrap up our conversation with Jill Bialosky today here on Strategies for Living. Be right back. Hey, let's talk about the Robinson Film Center. I say it a lot. There's no place like the Robinson.
Absolutely, there is not.
617 Texas Street, downtown Shreveport. You've got so much. You got the movies. You got Abby Singer's Bistro on the second floor of RFC, open for lunch and dinner Tuesday through Saturday.
Newly remodeled.
Absolutely. Great menu. RobinsonFilmCenter.org is the way you check it all out. You can go to RobinsonFilmCenter.org at any time and find out what movies are showing. Here's the deal. You want to join the crowd, join the fun, become a member. When you become a member, you become a star. You get discounts on movies, you get concession upgrades, you get bistro deals. RFC, 617 Texas Street in downtown Shreveport. I'll say it again. There's no place like the Robinson.
There is not, and I'm glad we have one right here.
Absolutely. The RobinsonFilmCenter.org.
Reading begins not in the classroom, but in your child's brain. I'm Donisa Walker with Learning RX Shreveport. If your child struggles to read, maybe he or she has trouble focusing or comprehending, Learning RX Shreveport offers a science solution to reading problems, working one-on-one with your child, targeting his or her reading skills. Today, call Learning RX Shreveport. Make an appointment to have your child assessed. I know you want to help your child, so does Learning RX Shreveport.
Hi, Highway 98.9.
We have had our cell phone plans with almost every company. I'd list them all for you, but I won't bother.
It's a lot.
By far, the best price, the best service I've experienced is with T-Mobile. If you're like us, you don't love surprises when it comes to money.
I think you're going to like the Family Freedom offer. T-Mobile says they will pay off 4 phones up to $3,200, and they can get you out of your current carrier, hook you up with 4 new phones, and that's on them.
Yeah, and each line is only $25 a line per month. Imagine having to not worry about your monthly phone bill while you're on America's largest and fastest 5G network, enjoying your savings. That's Family Freedom from T-Mobile. Switch now at T-Mobile.com.
Up to $800 per line via virtual prepaid card when you switch to T-Mobile and get a new device. Card typically takes 15 days. Free phones via 24 monthly bill credits with finance agreement. Example, Apple iPhone 16, 128 GB, $829.99 eligible trade-in. Example, iPhone 11 Pro and 4 new lines on Essentials with AutoPay. For well-qualified customers, plus taxes and fees and $35 per line connection charge. Credits end and balance due if you pay off early or cancel. Contact T-Mobile, plus $5 per line without AutoPay. Debit or bank account required.
Double shots of classic rock.